the last video, we outlined the differences between leadership expectations and the manual. The idea that internally we have all these rules and practices we expect people to follow but don't communicate them, which can naturally cause confusion. In this video, we're going to talk more about expectations and specifically how to determine what the leadership expectations should be for a given organization and team. So as a reminder, expectations are those rules of engagement. They are non-negotiables, right? So those things that we just don't even need to argue about. They are agreed upon behaviors, norms, and practices that everyone on the team is held to, and expectations are value-based, so they tend to remain pretty consistent over time, and they need to really be relevant to the organization that you work in. So how do we go about the business of really identifying our expectations? Well, first, I think what's important is that you really write down and you think about what are all those things that you expect of people that you work with. You've got to start with a broad list. Expectations from my perspective should be no more than 5, maybe 3 to 5, right? But sometimes what we have to do is flush out everything that we really expect of people, especially in light of the other segment that I recorded about the manual, right? The discussion that we had about the manual helps you recognize that some things that you want from folks are really just more personal preference versus expectations are really about the performance of the team and how well the team works together. So the process that we need to go through with expectations is we need to look at, what are those key values? What are those things that really, really resonate for us about how we want people to be in the world and how we expect people to show up at work that drives performance? And sometimes that list is pretty broad and large as we start. Okay. As I'm leading this discussion with you, I really want you to think about what are those key elements that are so important to me as it relates to people that I work with. Now, if you're managing people right now, I imagine this is pretty simple for you because you know what the things are that people do. Sometimes we know what they do that we don't like before we can kind of identify what we do like. But you know what it is that really is important to you and as far as managing that team. If you're not managing people right now, that's okay. You can still do this work because I want you to think about it as a team member. What are those things that you look for in people that you work with? And so as we talk about expectations, I want to make sure that we're really clear again that these are principles that we prefer and we know will drive the performance of the team and help the team work together so that we're really, really effective, right? These are not rules that we have. For example, you need to be at work on time. Okay, that's a rule. And in my next segment, we're going to talk more specifically about that. But things to think about as it relates to expectations as you start to cultivate these in your mind. What are those behaviors that you want to see from people every day? And then you root those sometimes back to those values: honesty, integrity, communication, trust, value, ownership, accountability. These are some areas that I often hear about when people start talking about their expectations. What does trust look like on a team? And why is that important? What does accountability look like on a team? And why is that important? What does ownership look like on a team? And why is that important? What does communication look like on a team? And why is that important? These are generally some of the big rocks that leaders will start to talk about when they're talking about expectations. And I think I talked about in my last discussion. For me, when I led teams, there were always a few that were just critical. Being honest is one of them, right? I've already talked about that once. Be honest. Another one for me was focus on solutions. As a leader, and for those of you who've been leading and managing teams a long time, I'm sure this will resonate for you. I can't just face your problems all day. Don't bring your problems to me and expect me to resolve them. My expectation is if you work for me, you're going to think through solutions and then we're going to brainstorm together on what the best one is. I want to be developing my folks, not just fixing for my folks. And so a very clear expectation I always had was let's focus on solutions, right? Let's talk about solutions. Another one for me was really to protect the integrity of who we were as a team. And so I had a very important expectation that we would lift each other up. We would always be that team that would lift each other and other people up. I have seen so many teams get torn apart by gossip and backstabbing and competitiveness, and that was never going to be a team that I wanted to manage. Those are a couple of examples. Be honest, focus on solutions, lift one another up, okay?
This segment is about you starting to really think about what are those key things that you expect, those key behaviors that you look for in a team that you know will drive ultimate performance. I'm going to ask you to really think about that and start your list. And in our next segment, we're going to compare expectations to standards to make sure we're really clear on how those work together. And then you're going to be able to put your list together of those expectations, and we're going to talk about what to do with that list once you've done so.